We're starting a new series this weekend. We're calling it Well Done, which makes me think of steak. Pretty much everything makes me think of steak, but it's not about steak, okay? This is about a life well done. In fact, Jesus uses these words in a parable he makes up in Matthew chapter 25. It's called the parable of the three servants, or the parable of the talents, where basically he makes up a story of a man who distributed his wealth to three different people and said, do well with it, and he gives them different amounts. But he says, take it and do something with it. So the first two double it. They invest, they work hard, and they double the money. And the third, it says, actually in Matthew 25, when the master comes back to see what they did, the guy says, I was afraid. He said, I was afraid. So he said, I buried it in the ground. I was afraid I was going to screw it up. I was afraid I was going to lose your money. I was afraid my idea wouldn't work. And so he said, I buried it. And then, of course, he gets this like the master's like, you wicked, lazy servant. The parable, I think, taken well, gives us a responsibility around productivity and fruitfulness, and that we need to make our life count and to do good work. I think taken the worst way or a bad way would be to have it turn you into paranoia that, I'm just not going to do enough. I could have gotten two more. I could have, if I would have done a little bit more. I don't think that's the intention. I think God wants me to be productive. I think he wants me to be fruitful. I think he wants me to work hard, do good work. But I don't think God's up in heaven on pins and needles today like I hope Ford brings it, because if he doesn't, kingdom's in jeopardy, I mean, this guy, if he doesn't hit a home run in that sermon, man, Jesus looking at the angels like, this is our only hope, guys, plan A. We don't have plan B. It's Ford, okay? He's got to kill it. If he doesn't, oh my goodness, it's an emergency meeting in heaven. We got to figure out what we're going to do. I don't think you're supposed to live with that weight. I think it might crush you. You're not designed for that. So to have a confidence like my life matters, but not like getting too big ahead on this whole thing. God was doing okay before we got here, guys. I think he's going to do fine when we leave. We get to run our leg of the journey well. That's kind of the spirit of that text. But he says this thing like, well done, good job, which is a nice affirmation. Certainly from God, but it's a nice affirmation from anyone. You ever done good work and your boss or the client you were working for is like, well done, I like that. Good, that was good stuff. I think that's what we want our life in a big picture like to be. I'm going to operate under that assumption that nobody here is going, I want to see how bad I can mess this thing up. I don't know. I'm going to see how many people I can hurt. How much damage can I do? I just want to see the depth of the damage I can do. No, I believe everybody in this room wants a well done. I want to do this well. So I'm going to take over the next few weeks and pick a few topics, may appear non sequitur, but I think they all fit with this concept of our lives being well done. The first thing I want to talk to you today is a big part of your life being lived well is how you manage stress. How you manage stress. Chances are you're probably trying to eliminate stress. All right. In fact, you might fantasize about a life with none. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? A life with no stress. I heard a guy the other day, he was saying, he said, man, when I was in junior high, I was dying to get to high school. Then when I was in high school, I was dying to get to college. When I was in college, I was dying to start my career. When I was single, I was dying to get married. And when we got married, I was dying to have kids. And we were dying to have kids. He goes, once we had kids, I was dying for them to graduate high school. And then I was dying for them to leave. And then I was dying to retire. And he said, now I'm retired and I'm just dying. Every situation, every blessing brought stress. And yet we don't want to be these people that just keep wishing ourselves out of stuff and get to the end and go, I don't think I lived that well. I was actually trying to get out of everything I was in. Stress management is really important. If you didn't have any stress, you'd probably be dead, frankly. Because actually stress is God's way. God designed you biologically for stress to increase your chances of surviving. There's signals from your brain that go to your adrenal glands that actually release cortisol and adrenaline to actually go, there's a threat in front of me, potentially rational threat. I need to be highly alert and energized to battle this threat. So if you didn't have that stress going on with real threats in front of you, you'd probably be dead. But of course, if you have too much stress, you'd probably be dead too. Stress will kill you. Too much, overload, leads to heart disease, leads to high blood pressure, leads to deep, deep depression. So we got to figure out, how do we manage this well? And today I want to learn from a powerful woman in the Bible, a woman by the name of Esther. If you have your Bible, turn to Esther chapter 4. The question we're going to wrestle with today, I'm going to give you 5 things from her life. We're going to answer this question: how do I handle stressful situations well? How do I handle stressful situations well? Let me give you a quick background on Esther, okay? This story is interesting. Book of Esther, 10 chapters. God is not mentioned one time in the book of Esther. Isn't that weird? It's like in the Bible. The Bible's kind of about God. Write that in your notes, okay? Make sure you get that. Bible is about God. And yet Esther doesn't mention God. It doesn't mention it anywhere. So which begs the question, well, what's up with that? Why would it not be mentioned? Was it because God's not active in Esther? And the answer is absolutely not. God is totally active in Esther. The writer of Esther invites the reader to actually look for God in places he may have been buried in your awareness, which I think might be the best training in the whole Bible. Because how often is something happening on a Tuesday and you just think it's life happening and you don't see God's hand on it? I do that all the time. And bad news is St. Peter's not following you around going, God did that. God did that, right? In the Bible, a lot of the narrative, the author says, and then God did this. And then God led them to this. And then God opened this door. There's a lot of like giving God credit through the authors, but to the people in real time, it just feels like life. So in Esther, we are taught to look for God's hand because God's all over Esther's story, all over. He's all in it. And yet you have to have your head up to go, oh, okay, I perceive, I sense this is a God thing. God's in the middle of this, and to find him where he may normally be buried. The timing of the story is 100 years into the exile of the Israelites, the nation of Israel, into Babylon. And what's going on, we pick up this guy, Xerxes, who's the head of the Persian Empire, who in the beginning of the story, he throws these 2 big parties, and this dude has way too much power. He's unstable, erratic, and he drinks way too much. So in chapter 1, he's drunk at a party, and he calls for his wife. Somebody bring Vashti, bring my wife. She's beautiful. I want everybody to see her. So he's like, tell Vashti to come and parade her beauty in front of all my friends. And Vashti's like, nah, I don't think I want to do that. So she just passes. Like, I'm going to pass on it. Well, his advisors go, whoa, now, that was a big thing. Dude, you're Xerxes, doggone it. You called for your wife, and she didn't come out. This is going to set off a chain reaction, and the whole empire is going to be catastrophic, okay? Because you know what's going to happen? Wives are going to think that they're in charge, okay? We can't have that, all right? So he said, women all over, they're going to start revolting, and they'll start coloring their hair and stuff, and it's just going to get crazy, okay? They're going to wear pants. Like, it's going to be awful. So he says, you know what? You need to deal with Vashti. You need to put her in check in front of everybody. And then you need to issue a decree. Men are in charge and women need to act right. And Xerxes is like, that's a great idea. So he deposes Vashti. You're out. And then he issues this decree, and I'm sure it went over really well. And then he decides, well, I need a new wife now. So they hold this contest to collect all the beautiful women of the region, and he's gonna go down the line. Well, I'll take her. And so this is where this woman Esther emerges. Esther's an orphan. Both her parents are dead. She's being raised by her uncle Mordecai. It's like a mentor in her life. And Esther goes, and she essentially now becomes queen. She's hidden the fact that she's a Jew, so nobody knows this. And so now she's now married to Xerxes. Mordecai, her uncle, he's a wise dude. He's a man of principle, and he works for the government, and he makes an unfortunate enemy. There's a guy named Haman who is, thinks he's a pretty big deal. And everywhere Haman went, people had to bow down. But Mordecai, Esther's uncle, decides, I'm not bowing to this dude. It's one thing to obey the rules. It's one thing to be honorable, but I'm not going to worship a dude. I'm not going to worship a person, okay? So I'm not going to do it. So every time Haman walked by, Mordecai didn't bow down. And so now Haman, and with his ego blown up and, that weird combination between arrogant and insecure, he's like, you know what? I'm going to wipe this dude Mordecai out. But then he goes, you know what though? It's not just Mordecai. It's him and his people. It's those people over there that basically none of them want to bow down, and they're a problem. So next time Xerxes drinks a little bit too much, okay, here's Haman. He's like, hey, there's Mordecai. We got to deal with Mordecai, and we got to deal with those people over there, these Jews. They're all a problem. And so he comes up with a plan on how to exterminate not just Mordecai, but all of the Jews. And he says, I can monetize it. I figured out how to monetize it. And Xerxes goes, done. Love that plan. That's a great idea. We eliminate a threat and make some money in the process. That's my love language. And so now here they have this threat. Mordecai now is terrified because there's a date on it. They literally put out a date on this date, wiping these people out. And they put it in writing. And Mordecai finds this out, and he realizes, dude, I didn't bow down. This set off a chain reaction. It's an existential threat. And he begins weeping and wailing and crying. And Esther now finds out that Mordecai's upset. She doesn't know what's up. She doesn't know about the decree, but she knows he's upset. Esther chapter 4, verse 5 says she ordered him, her assistant, to go to Mordecai to find out what was troubling him, why he was mourning. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach, who was her assistant, a copy of the decree. So here it is in writing. This isn't just some rumor. Here's proof. And that was issued in Susa and called for the death of all the Jews. And he asked Hathach to show it to Esther. Esther needs to see this, explain the situation to her. And he also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king and beg for mercy and plead for her people. Okay? 5 things we're going to do with stress. 5 things of how we handle it well. Number 1, you have to look reality in the face. You have to define reality. You have to look it in the face. Okay, stress triggers a fight or flight. Sometimes you got to fight. Sometimes you got to flight. And you got to know who you are. What's your tendency? Are you easily baited? Are you a fighter? Are you aggressive? Are you proactive? Do you tend to go headlong into it? Okay, are you combative, conflicting type person? You know what, sometimes the first conflict you have to have is with yourself to go, you know what, I'm gonna let this go off me like water off a duck's back. You can't, in the words of Winston Churchill, if you're not gonna get anywhere if you stop to throw stones at every dog that barks. So sometimes you gotta let it go. I'm gonna flight on this one. I'm just gonna let it go because I have a limited quantity of energy and time and focus, mental and emotional energy and output. I can't just fight everything. But sometimes you can't avoid it. I can't put my head in the sand. This isn't just a rumor. This is a big deal. And so what does Mordecai do? But he goes to Esther and he's defining reality. He's looking reality in the face. It's in writing. This isn't like murmuring. This isn't like a little thing. This isn't a couple people might get it. This is huge. They're gonna wipe us all out. And so he goes to her and says, I need you to take your position and to get proactive and go to the king. Okay, so they watch this ping pong where they're defining reality. Esther comes back and further defines reality. Okay, here's what you asked me to do, sir. All of the king's officials and all people in the province know anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited in is doomed to die unless the king holds out a gold scepter, and the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. Esther's not saying, I won't do this, but Esther is looking reality in the face. Let's not be naive of the threats here. If I go in, I could die, okay? We know this, what's reality? Xerxes is an unstable dude. Okay, he's got a substance abuse problem. He's unstable. He's moody. He's impulsive. Okay, he threw his last wife out because she didn't walk through the party. He threw her out. What would he do to me if I just come in? This is what the law says. He's empowered to do so. This guy has way too much power. She's not saying I won't do it. She's defining reality. I got to look the threat in the eyeball. I got to look right at it and define what is reality. So then Mordecai comes back with a further definition of reality. He says to her, hey, don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. In other words, I love this. Hey, he's mentoring Esther. Stress can make you short-sighted and myopic, thinking just about the moment, and self-preservation. Sister, don't do that. Your life is about something bigger. Your life is about something bigger. And don't think for 1 second that you're going to be able to get away just because you're in the palace, he says. Now look what he says next. He says, if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Ooh, I love that. I love that because Mordecai has a belief in God and his faithfulness. He's like, look, God wants to use you right now, but if you don't step up to the plate, make no mistake about it, God's not taking an L. God's going to raise somebody up. Amen. But you won't be there to see it. You won't be around to see it. God's going to raise somebody up. He's positioned you to do something. If you won't do something, God will find someone who will. This is consistent throughout the Bible. You see, when Saul turned his heart from God, God started looking around, found David. I found me a man. I found somebody who's after my heart. Okay, so Saul, if you don't want to lead right, I'll find me a leader. But guess what, Saul? You're not going to be around to see the fruit that's going to come from it. And so Mordecai what's he doing? Defining reality. You're in a position to do something. I know it's scary. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. But if you don't step up, God will do something. God's going to show up with somebody else. What are you going to do about it? And so you have to define reality. The second thing is you have to focus on your purpose. Okay, look what he's doing here. He's elevating her thinking. He's helping her think bigger than just self-preservation. He's helping her think purpose. Look what he says next. Relief from the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Look what he says next. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. This is the most famous verse in all of Esther. Perhaps you've been put in this kingdom. Perhaps you've been gifted as you are. Your physical gifts and your mental gifts and your personality gifts all coming into an intersection with an opportunity that's positioned you in this place to do something about this problem. Perhaps all of that has come together in a defining moment. For this moment, he's saying, don't get caught up in self-preservation. We're all going to die at some point, but maybe the purpose that God has for your life is coming to fruition right now. And you know what it looks like? Stress. A stressful situation. And in that stressful situation, instead of getting focused just on the here and now and thinking petty and small, think substance, think big, think purpose. He said, maybe it's all for this time in this moment. Number 3, you got to come up with a plan. How do I handle stressful situations? Well, I look reality in the face. I won't let it bully me in my periphery. Number 2, I focus on my purpose. I got to think bigger than just the moment. But number 3, come up with a plan. Esther comes back to Mordecai with a plan. She says, okay, here's what we're going to do. Go and gather all the Jews. Here's your part, Mordecai. Gather all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. Notice, let's deconstruct this real quick. She asks for help where she needs it. She gets help. Okay, look, Mordecai, you're outside the palace. I'm in the palace. You're out on the other side of the gate. I'm over here. Get the team together, and we're going to pray and fast. We're going to get our minds right. We're going to get our hearts right. We're going to get focused. Okay, we're blocking everything else out, and we're going to ask God for help. And we're going to get the team aligned. Why? That's all we can do. We're going to ask God for help, and we're going to get the team aligned. How many of you know prayer is not the least we can do? It's the most we can do. I'm going to God. I'm going to get my heart right because I'm about to go into the palace. I'm going to do what I can do, which is I'm going to walk in there, but I'm going to go in there 3 days, prayed up, fasted. I'm rolling in good energy, okay? I don't know what Xerxes is going to do. I don't know what he drank for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I don't know if he's moody or what, but I know this. I'm going in prayed up, fasted up, ready to go. Here's my plan. and she knew what to delegate. She knew what to entrust to other people. She knew where to get help. Everybody played their part. It says Mordecai did as she told him to do. And then she said, but here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going in. I'm going in, and I'm gonna do what only I can do, which is the fourth thing, which is to act courageously. Okay? One of the things that stress does, it causes us stress, is a feeling that you are a bystander in your life. You're getting blown around all over the place. Everybody's making decisions about you that affect you, and you have no power. And you got all this uncertainty. I don't know what they're gonna do, and I don't know what they're gonna do. And if I have this conversation, it could go good or it could go bad. And this could happen and that could happen. And so all the uncertainty, it makes us feel stuck, makes us feel powerless, makes us feel weak. And at some point, you have to decide, like, I'm not going to let all the uncertainty keep me from taking action courageously. Like she says, we're gonna fast, we're gonna pray, we're gonna ask God for help, we're gonna get the team aligned. And then she said, and then I'm going in. She could have said, I can't go in. You know what? I can't go in. I can't trust that guy. You know what? I can't go in. The authority figure is erratic. You know, I can't go in. It's against the rules. I can't go. At some point, she went, no, I've looked the threat in the face. I've defined reality. This is a big deal. There is no flight. This is fight. I'm gonna get my plan together, I'm gonna get my heart right, and I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other, and I'm gonna walk myself into that court, and I'm gonna put myself in harm's way, and I'm going to step up to the plate. That's what I'm gonna do. And I think often, man, we think we have no power. We're powerless in our own lives. That is not true. That is not true. You have power in your life. Sometimes I think, man, we gotta get some of that energy that we, especially some of that new covenant energy of like who you are in Christ. Like, I know you feel powerless, dude. I know people are saying stuff about you, doing stuff, making decisions about your life that you don't have control of, but you're not powerless. There are some things you can do. So sometimes you just got to power up in the new covenant word. Like sometimes you got to get some of that Romans 8:11 energy that you know, the spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in me. And by the same spirit that God raised Jesus from the dead, he'll strengthen your mortal bodies by that same spirit. You know what I'm saying? You got to get some of that Romans 8:31 energy, okay? That Romans 8:31 energy that said if God is for us, who can be against us? Some of that Romans 8:37 energy, okay, that I'm more than a conqueror, I'm more than a conqueror. Some of that Ephesians 6 energy, putting on the armor of God so I can stand against the scheme, and having done all to stand, it says, stand therefore, like, you know what, I'm not weak, I'm a courageous person, and I'm gonna walk in, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna walk in. I skipped one because that's number 4. Number 3 is come up with a plan. But it's all right, we can get them out of order, still get them all right, okay? The third thing is you gotta come up with a plan. She comes up with, did I already say that? I did say that, didn't I? One of my friends, Dave Dominy, he says, a plan, coming up with a plan is how I soothe myself from stress, okay? When you look at the causes of stress, I went online, I was looking at what causes stress. Difficult relationships, problems at work, grief and loss, an overwhelming project, unemployment cause stress, academic pressure, health problems, financial difficulties. Every one of these things you can come up with a plan for. Okay, I've got relational problem, man, a key relationship. Okay, what's your plan? What are you gonna do? Well, got to have a crucial conversation, but I'm not good at those. And I get in, okay, what's your plan? See, there's no law that says you can't write your thoughts down and go to the person and say, look, this is a really important conversation, and I don't want to start saying things I don't mean, because if I do, I can't put them back in my mouth. So I've written my thoughts down. I'd like to read them to you so I get them completely right. Okay, what is that? That's a plan. Is it going to work? Don't know, but it's a good plan. And guess what? When you come up with a plan for your physical health, or what you're going to do about academic pressure, or what you're going to do about your job stress, if you have no plan, it's even more stressful, because you're like, I don't know. I've had bad plans that made me feel better, you know? It wasn't even a good plan, but it's like, it's a plan, you know? It'll work. Like, let's give it a shot, okay? How many of you know you can score a touchdown on a bad play if you throw your weight into it, okay? You've seen it snap it over the quarterback's head. Somehow they end up in the end zone. Bad play. But you know what? Sometimes they work. A plan, a play, It helps with stress. So you come up with a plan, you act courageously, and the fifth thing is this: you release what's out of your control. Probably the second most famous words after such a time as this is Esther says, after she says, I will go in to see the king, she said, and if I must die, I must die. If I must perish, I must perish. She got to this place where she said, you know what? I don't have control of that. I'm not ignorant of the threat. I've looked reality in the face, but I'm not gonna overthink it. Here's how I think about it. You gotta look reality in the face, but don't stare too long. If you stare too long and you start thinking, oh, here's everything that could happen, and he could be in a bad mood. Well, he might, but you worrying about it for 3 days isn't gonna help it. So yeah, he could be in a bad mood. Well, he could be in a good mood, but if he's in a bad mood, your 3-day stress didn't help you out. Well, he could kill me, and here's about 45 ways he could kill me. Maybe he impales me on this. Maybe he hangs me. You're staring at it. You've looked at it. You know what's possible. Quit staring at it. Notice she takes 3 days to fast and pray and get her heart right, not 3 days to think about all the things that could come and just stare at what if Xerxes. And you know what's interesting is if you keep reading in chapter 5, she's fasted up, she's prayed up, she's got the team aligned, she puts her robe on, she walks in the court. Xerxes is like, what's up? Nice to see you. Like from the moment he sees her, he's like, happy to see her. What a waste of energy. What a waste of stress if for 3 days she's like, what if he's in a bad mood? What if he could be? You know what, you walk in, it's like, it's going good. It's going good. Could go bad. I'm not ignorant. He could do me like he did Vashti. He could do me a whole lot worse. But you know what? It went well. And because it went well, now it starts, you see as you keep reading, God uses both Esther and Mordecai at a defining moment to save a nation. A defining moment to help their people, a defining moment to make a gigantic change, to come up with problem-solving things and ideas and things that they wouldn't have normally had. So you have to release what's out of your control. I end with this. I was feeling stress in my life recently, and you know, I was feeling fear, like kind of a deep fear, and I decided, you know, I'm gonna figure out what this is. Fear and stress, they can be this bully that it's out here, and I'm like, I want to figure this out. So I had some conversations, and I was able to identify some core fears for me, 2 in particular, that had created kind of an undertone in my life that was stressing me out. And so I was able to put language on it. 2 core fears. I'm gonna share one of them with you. One of them, a core fear that I have, is that I get to the end of my life and I have a major regret that I look back and go, oh, I blew that and now it's too late. Can't do anything about it. But that was vague for me because I was feeling all the time like, is what I'm doing today, is it contributing to what I'll regret or not regret? Like I hadn't really gone in to do all the thinking of like, what would I regret? So what it did was when I started talking it out with and getting some help, I was able to really, really define my priority and actually imagine myself on my deathbed looking back, like what would I regret? Like imagine this scenario, how would you feel? Imagine this scenario, how would you feel? And because what I was trying to do in my life, because I was worried that I would regret, is I was trying to do it all. Because I was worried like if I don't do it all well, I'm gonna get to the end and I'll be like, oh, but I missed that. And so I was able to come up with tremendous definition around what priorities I have. And then now I can come up with a plan. My plan is I'm going to learn as much as I can and give my best energy to the things that matter most. And because it was that stress in some ways is an invitation into development. Stress is an invitation to do some thinking if you'll walk into it and really look at it. And sometimes you do some editing because you're empowered and you go, you know, I've been putting up with that relationship too long. That's done. That's causing stress. And I've been kind of thinking I couldn't end it, but I'm ending it. You know, this job over here, okay, I know unemployment's scary too. I'm not saying it's stressless to be unemployed, but you know, I'm doing this till it's toxic. I'm done. I'm cutting it off. And so sometimes you do some editing in the process. You take the power that God's given you and the ability to do some things that you have assumed constraints on your own life. But for me, it caused me to really, instead of this being this ambiguous fear that I was living with on a daily basis, Greg, you're gonna get to the end of your life and regret, I was able to come up with a plan and create tremendous definition. So like I imagined this. I imagined my max amount of success and taken, professionally and as a leader and as a teacher and all this stuff and what that would be. And I'm like, imagine myself on my deathbed going, man, I got every drop out of my potential and I did all this. But I really didn't know my wife. I didn't know her that well. And she didn't feel really loved. Would I regret that? That's what I'm scared of. So then I'm like, well, but I don't want to underachieve as a leader professionally and all my endeavors and my mission and all this. I don't want to do that. But what if I had to pick, What if I was like, I had a PhD in my wife? Like, dude, I knew that woman, everything about her. I knew what that facial expression meant. I knew I finished her sentence. I knew it was in her heart. I knew what made her feel fulfilled, what caused fear. I'm just studying her every day. I got there, but yet I didn't maybe get to the heights I could have over here. Would I regret that? No. So now I got my priorities in line. I've looked reality in the face. I realize to pick this over here means I'm gonna have to say no to some of this over here, which is going to cost me something. It will cost me something. Could cost you money, could cost you respect, could cost you opportunity, could cost you something. Count the cost. I know what that costs. I know what that pays. I know what this costs. I know what this pays. I'm gonna pick. So when I make the pick, I make it. And I make it well, and I don't feel a visceral fear. They're like, but I'm gonna miss. No. I pick my priority. I like my plan. I'm working my plan now. So you know what happened? You know what the byproduct of that was? Peace and rest. When you got this undercurrent of fear and stress, you can't rest. You have a nervous breakdown on the beach. Sunscreen on your nose, buried in the sand, stress, having a panic attack. Why? Because I got this deep stress, man, this fear I don't even know what it is. Look it in the eye. Look it in the eye. Think purpose. Come up with a plan. Act courageously. Release the unknown. Hey, I don't know if it'll cost me. It might not. I'm willing for it. I'm working my plan, and I'm gonna release the things that are out of my control to God and watch what emerges from that. All of a sudden, peace emerges from that. All of a sudden, rest emerges from that. You can actually take a day off. You can actually exhale a bit. Why? It came from actually the stress. This is development. God's doing something here. Don't wish for, hope for, try for a stress-free life. God put it into your biology for a reason. But don't let it overload you to the point that it kills you before your time. You got to go into it and find how to manage it. You want to live well? Well done, life well lived. You got to learn how to manage this stress. Here's what's about to happen in this moment. I'm going to invite you on your feet. Some of you have come in a stressful place that's disoriented you and caused chaos. And today, God's going to help you get your bearings back. God's gonna help you get your legs back under you as you think about this. Think about the different parts of the conversation today and ask God, Lord, what are you trying to say to me right now? Let's worship God together.